right? So after you have ascertained that there is a customer who may have a pain that you can help relieve, the next thing you need to figure out is that how big is that market? How many such users are there out there, right? Remember, we say that ultimately you have to be able to be financially viable. There had to be enough of people buying or needing your solutions, more than enough to cover your upfront fixed costs, and then be able to generate profit, right? So the first thing you want to figure out is that how big is the market? How big is the pie? But also, how fast is it growing? Maybe it is not that big now, but it's growing very fast in the future. So it become very big in the future, right? So that's something you need to factor in. And you need to think about the market structure. How is it segmented? Are all the users have similar need, and therefore you can produce one product or one service and you can be offered to everybody, or that their needs are very different and therefore you need to customize different product solutions to different market segments. So that's one of the things you need to figure out. Yeah? And then you then move on to competitor analysis, which is that with whom do you need to share the pie? And what is your source of competitive advantage versus the existing? Now, I think all of you have done some in preliminary competitive analysis. You need to figure out that where your strengths are compared to them for each different market. It is entirely possible that yours is worse than somebody else's technology for some user, some customer, but better in some other customer market. So part of your challenge is to find the right market segment that enhances your advantage and avoid market where your technology differentiation doesn't help provide added advantage, right? So that's part of the analysis you want to talk about. And therefore, that leads to a question about market positioning. And finally, there's the question of timing of entry. Because if you enter the market too early, the market hasn't developed yet, the supporting infrastructure, the supply chain is not available, it's very hard for you to actually survive. But if you enter a market too late, there are too many competitors, it's very hard to dislodge and display other competitors. So doing an assessment of at what point it is that your technology is able to fit into the market is important as well. Yeah. So we'll briefly touch on these topics. Right. So the first thing you want to ask is that what exactly is your market? And here you need to think about three things. One is the potential market, which is all the people who potentially might be able to use your may be interested in your technology solution. Then there's the addressable market, the market that you can actually address with your technology. And finally, of those that you can address, which part you want to choose to focus on. Now remember, just now we say that with Uber and Grab, you want to target all commuter. But if you think about it, actually they need to have a smartphone. So straight away, all those potential users who don't have a smartphone can't use your app. So your addressable market effectively are all those which had a smartphone. If you don't have a smartphone, they can't use your app. They can't be your customer, right? So that is the nature of what you have. And when we introduced, remember the Run Social, when we first introduced our first product, it actually ran on an iPad that you can strap over a machine before the treadmill maker actually eventually incorporated it into the machine itself. In fact, you look at most of the treadmill that are available now, they don't have that capability, right? So we have an iPad, but in fact, our first version only worked on Apple iPad. It doesn't work on Android Pad. For the obvious reason that to develop a version that run on the Android Pad require a lot more development, and Android, although supposed to be a standard operating system, is actually not that standard, and there are a lot of variation for you to test. So you can see here that therefore initially when we introduced the first product, it only ran on iPhone. So effectively the addressable market are people with iPad. People who Android Pad is not a user. Not because we think we don't want to serve them, but simply technologically we can't be developing two technology platforms simultaneously. So you have to think about, therefore, issue about addressable. Then finally, you have a target market, right? The market that you want to focus on. So our friend there say that, well, the car driver could be a potential market. the people who use public transport regularly could be a potential market, but we decided that our target market is only those who use current taxis regularly, right? So this is your chosen target market. Now, why you choose this, there must be some reason, right? So this is the way you want to think through what constitutes a market. And of course, a last part of all of you will be doing is to try and estimate how big is the market size. All this, you have to have a lot of domain knowledge in order to understand how you define the market size. But you have to think through that it is some combination of the number of addressable customer times the average transaction size and the number of transaction per customer per year. So there are things that are, you have a lot of users, but they don't need to use it very often. Or you have things that there are not many users, but they need to use it very frequently, right? So you are addressing different dimensions of the factor that affect market size. And the next thing you want to think about is that what constitutes a market segment? In other words, do you have one product that can serve the entire market, or you need to break it down into different subsegments that are very different? And essentially, the way you decide whether you have one segment or multiple segments is to ask, do they have a common set of jobs to be done that has a common set of well-defined gain and pain? If their pains are all quite different, then it's effectively they are different market segments, right? So when you draw up the job to be done and the gain and pain, that immediately inform you as to whether the underlying people you are imagining have this, have a common set or different, right? So one way to define the segment is to see how common are these pains, how common are these gains they want to achieve, right? So now you can think through other ways to define the market segment that may cause this gain and pain to be different. So we say, for example, if you have affordability, high-end, to the high-end customer, their gain is a much higher quality and their pain is less about cost because they can afford it. But to low-income people, cost becomes a much bigger concern, right? Much bigger pain. So therefore, that may tell you that there are actually two different market segments. So that's how you actually arrive at different market segmentation. But of course, there could be some other ways to deal with it. And so what I outlined here are some of the common ones, but you have to figure out for your own potential market that you're trying to target, what constitutes the demarcation into different segments, right? So one way to think about it is first you decide, are you selling to a new or an existing market? An existing market means there's an existing solution. I just want to do a better job, so hopefully I take market share from the existing. Remember the case about the translucent braces? There is an existing market. People are using metallic braces. What I'm going to try to say is that my translucent braces is better than metallic. So people, instead of using the existing metallic, they switch to use mine. I am replacing an existing product with my product, which I claim is better. But in some cases, you may be catering to new needs. There is no existing product that meets that needs. And you are the only product that initially come and meet that need. And that need could be a latent need that somehow has not been satisfied. People may not even realize that there could be such a need, and therefore you are the first one to identify it maybe, or you're the first one to come up with a technological capability that enables such a need to be satisfied. Yeah? Okay? So each one faces its different challenge. When you are displacing an incumbent, of course, the incumbent will try to fight you, right? And you have to also make sure that you have enough of a different in terms of reducing the pain that they're willing to switch. So one of the challenges is that of resistance. People are used to an existing product. You ask them to switch. There's a learning cost. There's a switching cost. Switching cost means I have to throw away what I have. And learning cost means I got to learn to be comfortable to use your new technology. So it depends on how difficult it is for you to learn your thing, and also depend on how much you have already invested in the existing technology. If the existing technology is very costly, they may be reluctant to sort of get rid of it and switch. right? So sometimes this, you may say it's a sunk cost, but nonetheless, many organizations, you deal with enterprise, they cannot justify throwing away what they have and get your new one. They may have to wait till it's sufficiently amortized before they, they buy new one and so on, right? So these are things that you deal with. And of course, you expect retaliations by the existing incumbent who are likely to be strong and powerful. So in a sense, the issues are different. Now, at the risk of oversimplification, we can think about 4 types of market. One is, I mentioned, existing market. You have to show that you are doing something better, or you may go for the high end with performance that is not achievable by existing technology and product. So implicitly, for many technology startups, your main focus is that you enable people to do, rather your technology has capability that existing technology cannot provide, right? You're providing better technology. Could be faster, could be better. The other is a resegmented market, meaning that you create a niche that the general product out there do not solve. So if I hear correctly this morning, right, the Poly team say, well, there are a lot of machines out there to provide you with with training, visual training. Okay, but they are general and therefore they are very expensive. But if I find some niche where I do a much better job and then it's much cheaper, then I created a product that serves that niche very well, doesn't serve the general need, but then I dominate that niche, right? So that could be one approach that you may adopt, yeah? And one way to think about it also that you could have a cheaper low end, that the current product is just too expensive, and you produce something with much lower functionality and therefore your cost is lower, you are now able to sell to customers who otherwise could not afford to use this product, right? So that could be another form of resegmentation, yeah? We talk about new market, which is that you have something that didn't exist before, and clone market is where it's a local adaptation of something that exists somewhere else. So you could say that maybe Uber was the first to prove that this ride-hailing app, this sharing model works, but once people see it, practically every country has their own version of Uber, right? In China, you have your Kuai Didi, in Indonesia, you got Gojek, and in Sri Lanka, for example, you have people who can not just share ride, you can share boat also, no? Because in last part of Sri Lanka, actually a lot of flooding and people use boat. So you can see therefore there are a lot of local clone adaptations of what you may have developed, yeah? And especially you have no proprietary IP that can prevent people from cloning you. This is likely to be a common market as well, yeah? So you can then walk through what are some of the characteristics of this different type and then see how you can fit in, yeah? So one other way is important for you to recognize is that in almost every market, there is a segmentation by what we call adoption stages. Meaning that there are usually in all markets, there is a mainstream market that accounts for the main bulk of the market. But before this market gets developed, you usually need what we call the techie and the visionary. These are people who are more willing to try unproven, untested technology, who features are not very well developed, and the technology may be still immature, but they are prepared to invest in using it because they need it so much. Their pain is so great that they can't wait for the mature product to emerge. They're willing to try it, even if it's not well established. But the majority of users are not like this. The majority are called either pragmatists or they are conservative. The pragmatists are those who say, I will adopt if someone like me has adopted. If they have, then we will adopt. But if no other bank has adopted it, I don't want to be the guinea pig. Okay? So this is what the pragmatist is. The conservative are those who usually kind of say that I don't adopt until it more or less become industry standard, right? And so they tend to wait for a fairly major market to be established when things are already very standardized, where all the risks are taken out, yeah? And finally, the skeptics are those who will never adopt, more or less, you can say, and therefore you don't waste your time and resources on this group, because the amount of effort you need to convert this group is just not worth it. Yeah. So the usual idea is that you start with having the techie, you try it, but that give you feedback to further improve your product, and then the key thing is to have visionaries who are willing to adopt it, and then this demonstrate finally to the pragmatists that it's time for us to also go in. However, as the literature kind of strongly highlighted, that there is a so-called a chasm between this and this. So later I will elaborate this a bit more. But so what I run through very quickly is in a very nutshell some of the key competitive market analysis you need to do. I mean, obviously this is a very big topic, and you have to use the actual domain knowledge you have about the particular market that you're targeting. Yeah. But I want to use this to sort of guide you to talk a bit about also the difference between end consumer and corporate customer, because corporate customer, as I alluded to this morning, their set of gain and pain are very different from end consumer. End consumer decision-making structure are usually quite different from that of the corporate enterprises. Yeah. So therefore, competitive analysis essentially boils down to making a clear understanding of where your product stands compared with alternatives that is either already existing or are also coming into the market, right? So one way to think about this is some kind of competitive differentiation. And okay, one tool that I would like to recommend you to use, there are many tools for competitive analysis, but the one I thought is particularly useful for this purpose is to what I call the definition of the blue ocean map. Now, some of you may have heard of the Blue Ocean Strategy book, right? Who have heard of Blue Ocean Strategy book? Right. So Blue Ocean Strategy book essentially says that the way you compare yourself versus other competitor and versus the industry practice is that first, on the horizontal axis, you write down all the key performance features. We mentioned that every product has different performance features, right? If the data storage is the speed, is the reliability, is the amount of storage, right? If it's private transportation, it is the safety, convenience, time, or whatever, right? Every product, every service has many performance dimensions. So you list down all the performance dimensions, and then you ask yourself with every one of these, there are four things you can do. One is that you can choose to lower, you can choose to either eliminate that performance. That means you don't offer that feature at all. An existing product offers some feature, but you choose not to offer it. And the reason you may choose not to offer it because it saves you cost. Because every performance feature costs money, right, to provide for. And you ask yourself, what if we eliminate this? Maybe some customer segment, not all, don't actually need that feature. So what happens if we eliminate it? So one thing is to eliminate this. The other is to lower its performance. Why do you want to lower the performance? Again, it may be because to save cost. Because remember, every performance feature you offer costs money. Costs money to build into your product, costs money to service, to maintain, right? So in some cases, by reducing and eliminating certain performance feature, that give you room to do other things. One is that you raise some performance feature. And thirdly, and more importantly, according to in their view, is that it allows you to introduce new performance feature that did not exist before. So a simple example to illustrate this. When digital camera were first introduced, compared to the existing chemical film-based camera, you think about a camera, what are some key performance features? Well, one key performance feature is the resolution of the picture, right? How crisp is the picture? When digital imaging first came on the market, its resolution is very low. So effectively, it is lowering its performance feature compared to existing camera, right? Now you may ask, Who on earth would want to buy a product that has lower performance, poorer quality pictures? Why would anybody want to buy it? If you remember how digital camera were first introduced, what was the advantage that digital camera have that over chemical film-based camera? Its performance is much worse. The quality is poorer. The picture resolution is lower. Right, so one of the features that did not exist in the existing system is that it's an instant feedback. Right? With the chemical film, I take a picture. I do not know how it looks until I develop the film. I have to wait till the whole roll of film is finished. I take it to the corner store, and it may take a few hours to process. By the time I see the picture, you say, oh, terrible, my eyes were closed. That's my wife's favorite saying. Yeah? Delete that because my eyes are closed. But the advantage is that with instant, you can see it immediately. If it's not right, you take again, right? Whereas with the chemical film base, you don't have that chance. By the time you see the product of what you have taken, it could be 1 week, could be 2 weeks later, the moment is gone. And so, therefore, the first entry of this in the market is to where this feature become important. Now, and another feature you may say is that because it is digital imaging, you can immediately send the picture through electronic means to someone. In fact, if anyone, does anybody know which company first introduced a digital camera commercially in the market? Kodak. No, it's not Kodak. Yeah. Kodak has developed one, but they never be the first to sell it. It was in the lab. Yeah. The first one is actually Casio. Casio is never in the camera business. So the leading camera, the chemical film camera maker, the Canon, the Yashica, all that, they never introduced. Casio, and the first application of this is actually, you have a lot of buyer who go, let's say I'm a Japanese company, I want to buy shoes from China. I go to China, I see this color with this shoe design, I take a picture, send back to headquarters immediately. The headquarters can look at it. The resolution is not that good, but it's good enough for them to say, is this the design okay? Is this the color okay? This instant feedback was in fact the first commercial use of a digital camera, right? And for that purpose, right, in a sense, I have a much lower resolution, but I allow you to have more faster feedback to headquarters. I don't have to wait till I take this picture, go back to Japan, develop it, then show to see whether it's right or not. Right? This instant feedback and instant transfer of information was the one that actually helped them initially get through. So you get the idea here that it is very rare that you can have a new innovation that is better than existing product in every conceivable dimension. Usually not possible. You usually have to give up on some in order to do better on some others. And this could be a deliberate choice, but this could be a limitation of your technology as well. So the first thing you want to do is to be able to map out where you are compared to others. Now, I've seen the team that just now came up, right, to show the SUTD team, right? The favorite thing to do is to have a list of performance dimensions and say all your competitor has some of these, some of that. You are the only one that have everything, right? Right? And that was what was shown, right? Some have A, some have B, some have C. I have A, B, C, D, Therefore, I'm definitely the better, yeah? I would say that it's usually very rare. Probably you have selectively chosen those dimensions that you think your technology will perform better. And you don't put in other dimensions where, in fact, you'll be worse off. So, one of the things, as I said, a lot of you will be worse off is that, first, you got no brand, you got no track record. So if the buyer, if brand and track record is very important, they have a big advantage over you. You better acknowledge that. In fact, in many cases, if you're buying a lot of medical device or other device where brand and where sort of track record is very important, this is a big challenge if you're selling a new product, right? The other thing might be that, okay, you may perform better, but if you're reliable. Because in some time, people want to buy things that are also reliable, it works all the time. It works 24/7. Okay? Are you able to ensure the same reliability? And again, that is a problem sometimes when you introduce a new product. Your new product may perform better, but not as reliably. And that could be a factor that may prevent people from buying your product. So in every case, this framework encourages you to actually be as objective as possible, put down all the relevant dimensions, and these dimensions should come from your talking to the customer. What the customer tell you are really important. What is currently, why they are using certain existing product, why they choose to use this product, what is important in this product. And they can tell you also the pain. This product is good at this, but it's not good at that. So this is where you want to use it to sort of compare. Because you compare someone who likes to run outdoor, and imagine you want to convince them why with this, right? Because I don't have the, because one of the things about treadmill is very boring. Where people run outdoor, they find it, a different variety of scenic and all that, right? Now you can see here that they have, one of the advantage of people who run outdoor is that first, you've got the outdoor ambient, right? I like to have to feel the air, the scenery and so on, right? Secondly is that there's outdoor socializing, right? Like I run out there, talk to people and so on, right? So when you run on the treadmill, even with this tool, I actually eliminated this whole experience, right? And you may say that in this case, I have also made it less accessible. Because if you run outdoor, technically you can say, anytime I want to run outdoor, I can run. I just run outside. Whereas to use this, I got to find a gym. I got to find a treadmill. Unless I own a treadmill, I have to go and find a treadmill, or I have to join a club, or I have to, right? So it may be, you can say maybe not so accessible. Maybe it's also less affordable, because to run outside is free, right? I just go and run, right? But in order to have to use a treadmill, I got to pay a membership fee, I got to buy a treadmill. Maybe it's also less affordable. So you can see it suffers many disadvantages. But what are the possible ways in which you can do better? Well, one thing is that maybe it allows you to track your performance better. Because right now you run on your treadmill, the treadmill capture all your performance information, but when you finish, it's all gone. But now I allow you to capture. You can say that I run outdoor, I can use my Nike app and all that, it can track me. But that GPS tracking is not as accurate as if you actually do it on the treadmill where all the information get captured, right? So you can say I do it better here. But where this is trying to sort of be able to create is the first, you may say that you can actually improve on availability in some cases, paradoxically, because in many parts of the world, there's a certain time you cannot run outdoor. It's too cold, winter, temperature is -10 degrees. Next week I'm going to Stockholm. I just checked, it was -5 degrees, right? Well, so you have to be a brave soul to very equivalent. So it could be that, whereas this one you can run indoor, and therefore it may be greater availability. In some part of the world, it's not very safe to run in certain places. It's not safe to run at a certain time. After midnight, it's not safe to run in certain places. The streets are not safe, right? The parks are not safe. But in principle, with this, you can be, you can use this to kind of think through where you might be better. But where it really is the so-called blue ocean is to provide a way in which that a performance feature that did not exist when you run outdoor. One is that you create a lot more scenic variety. Because in principle, you can you can download different maps. I can have a scene in Yosemite. I can have a scene in the West Lake in Hangzhou. I can have one in Himalayas and all that. In principle, this app allows you to actually have all this high quality scenic. I can have this quality. I can have social running with my friend, as that video tried to demonstrate, right? My friend in Beijing, in London, together with me in Singapore, we can run. We are thousands of miles away, different time zone, but we can run together. This is a possibility that did not exist in the normal run outdoor, right? And of course, then you can do performance benchmarking. because if enough people use this app, the system will capture everyone who run on this app. And we can tell you, for example, if you are training for a marathon, right, by the 5th kilometer, where you are compared to other marathon runners. We can compare in your demographic group, in your gender group, in your whatever, where are you in your performance compared with that benchmark group. This is something we can do for you, which you cannot get from other sources, right? So in other words, you have to identify where you are creating new value, and you may give up on some area, but hopefully this will compensate against this. Now, it may not fully compensate it, so you may have to look at for those market segments where this is less important, and maybe something else is more important. So this is where, by doing this kind of analysis, you get a better picture of where your competitive advantage is, which target group, which market segment group are likely to be that you should go after, right? Because of where your strengths are versus where the strength of existing competitions. Let me ask you to think through, right? I gave you the example this morning of Exubera, needle injections, compared with inhaling, right? Where you think inhaling is doing better compared to injection, and where they do worse compared to injections. Anyone can recall what we said this morning?
Worse in efficacy.
Sorry?
Worse in efficacy. It's not as effective as...
Yeah, so let's say this red line, the red line is what currently injection do, okay, in terms of different performance dimensions. And if you are asking people to switch over inhaling, in which performance dimension is it doing better and which is worse?
So
yeah.
For the existing one, you know exactly how much you are injecting.
Right.
For the other one, you don't know. Sometimes you inhale more, sometimes.
Right, so you have a performance dimension about dosage certainty, right? So you know that this is the current performance of the existing injection. You are performing probably much worse, right? You are below. What else, or rather, what was the initial thinking of the people who introduced Exubera, the inhaler? What is it that they think is do better than injection? There's probably something about pain, right? So it's painless. So there is a dimension here that probably say that the level of pain or inconvenience or whatever, and you are assuming that your inhaling is perform better on that dimension, right? So it could be that the industry is here and you are here. There's a pain, right? Pain is because this is the higher it is, the better it is. So if it's a pain, then it's a reversal, right? So the painful one score very low here, and yours perform very high here in terms of, let's say, instead of comfort, comfort to use it, So yours is much more comfortable, the other is much more uncomfortable, because I have to prick myself. And the other thing may be about the skin. Your skin may look better because you don't poke your skin, right? But remember what was the reason why this failed? Because of some other performance dimension where it actually did not perform as well. One is that they had to do a lung test, right? So there's now the inconvenience of having to do additional tests, right? Which you didn't factor in. Then there's a question about the needles. Is possible, very convenient to put inside. I can carry it anywhere. But now with these giant machines, there's the question of portability, right? That you are less portable. So in other words, if you are really objective, then you can find out that what are all the key performance dimensions you need to take into account, in what you are better and what you are worse, and then you have to make the judgment on balance. Would people prefer this versus the others? Or rather, which customer segment would prefer our mix of performance feature versus the other? That's how you would go through this analysis to figure out what is your best positioning. Yeah? Okay. Well, again, I just drew this up. I don't think this is completely correct. But let's say if you were to do something like this, right? Now, a taxi actually has, you can have a taxi availability in taxi stand. You can actually flag down. These are things you cannot do with Uber. Uber had eliminated that possibility. Now, it depends on which city you are in. I was recently in Taipei, for example. I never had to use Grab because you walk on the street, taxis are cruising, I can flag them down. It's much faster than I do and it's reasonably cheap. So in a city like Taipei, where there are lots of taxis, this is actually an advantage. I can just flag them. Or there are certain well-known taxis that I just go there. If the queue is not high, I just go there. And taxi will come by. Again, I don't have to book. Now, these are admittedly not such a compelling value proposition, but they are compelling enough that in some cases, some customers will find it convenient. But Uber had eliminated this, right? Now, you can say that even the quality of the car in some city where the inspection, right, is rules are very stringent on taxi driver, the taxi are actually supposed to be maintained in good conditions. And so you actually find that the actual taxi company are in better quality than your normal Uber car, right? Some of them may not be in good condition, right? I guess you get the point that there could be area where you don't do as well, but you try to compensate by doing well in other area. For example, you have faster response time, we mentioned. You allow dynamic pricing. You allow real-time hail tracking. I know exactly where the guy is coming, right? I can see in the Google map, where he's turning, coming, and so on, And you can have also real-time route sharing. Remember, this is a feature that I said actually prompted the Grab co-founder to want to found Grab, because this is a feature that's not provided for. These are all new blue ocean performance features that current taxis do not provide, right? So I hope this example kind of illustrates to you there are always some performance feature where you do better, some you do less, and then you try and see whether on balance your offering would help you to be positioned more advantageously for some customer. Okay, as I said, I mean, I just drew it within half an hour. I mean, I have to admit that I just did it last night, because I said, oh, I need to talk about this, so I better have some example, But you can probably do a much better job, and this is my hypothesis. Some of this could be wrong, right? But the point is this: you write down what is your assumption, what is your hypothesis. Go and test it. Test it, is it true? Now, I have not even put down how do I measure this, but the idea is that you want to be able to go out and with this to test and validate your assumptions. Yes? Sure. Very good question. And the whole idea of this, having mapped it all out, is to then go, when you do the customer discovery interview, is to find out from them which of these performance features are most important to them. And your likely answer is that it depends on who you talk to. And that's when you figure out which customer segment is your right segment. The right segment are those who don't care about the things that you eliminate and value the thing that you do better, right? So you want to find customer segment that say that. Customers that say this is important to me, you have a hard sell. So you may want to avoid that segment. Yeah? So this is a way to actually get the feedback from the customer as to how important are certain features, but at least you know that where you stand. Yeah? But if you never, you see, a lot of times the problem is that you only focus on things that you do well. So this thing you never ask. Then you think that, since I do well, people must buy from me. But it could be that some customers, to them, this is important, and you eliminated them. But because you never ask them, they never tell you. So you don't get an objective, full picture of the situations. So this diagram kind of forces you to think through what are all the possible important dimensions, where you stand relative to others, and go out and validate to whom each of these are more important or less important. Yeah? Okay, any other question you may have on about this? So, as I said, the first thing is to decide where you stand relative to others. But let me add also that this is partly you have a choice, depending on what your customer feedback. If the customer feedback to you like this feature is really important, then you may realize that then I better spend a lot of money to ensure that all my Uber driver have high quality car, and certain lousy car I don't allow you to be registered, for example.
I have one question.
Yeah.
For the industry standard, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you have many competitors, right?
Sure.
Which is the benchmark?
Good question. You have to decide for yourself who is it that you're fighting against. When I say industry benchmark, I'm implicitly assuming there is one. But in fact, in reality, if you look at different competitors, each one is positioned differently. So in fact, you want to figure out who is it that you're competing most with, and therefore you compare yourself with that one. So it need not be just comparing with one other product, average industry product. It may be comparing with your selected target competitor. Because for that target segment, who is your closest competitor,
So
how they perform.
Specific brand or
Yes. So in principle, you should draw this again every competitor in the market. And the chances are that they may be positioned all differently. Some emphasize certain things, some don't emphasize other things. Yeah? Right? Okay, so after you figure out where your competitive advantage is, remember you say your competitive advantage is here, it's not here. So people who think this is important, you avoid, you go for a customer that values this and this, right? That's your positioning. And assuming that your analysis is correct, you will then do the best, you offer the best product or service to that customer segment. But we all know that anything that you do well, if it makes money, what will happen? People will copy you, right? Profitability is like honey. Anytime there's honey, the ants will come. The only reason there's no competitor very often is that because it doesn't make money. So when you say that your business have no competitor, actually seasoned investors start to worry. No competitor could be means no money to be made. That's why nobody bothered to compete with you, because there's no honey there, right? So assuming that you found the honey, the next thing you ask is that how can I prevent them to come in? Eventually they will figure out that there's money there, they will come. So the next question is the sustainability. Now, one thing you think about, of course, is that do you have some way to prevent them from coming in? One way is about proprietary technology protected by intellectual property. You got patent, you got copyright, you got trademark, or you have this secret sauce, you keep it as a trade secret so nobody knows how you do it. You have to ask yourself, what is the source for this advantage? We just discussed this morning, right, that with the Uber model, there's really no real proprietary technology here. Anybody can duplicate your ride-hailing apps. It's not that difficult. Yeah? So the other could be competitive advantage arising from other components of a business model. For example, it may require certain key talents, and you are the one who own a lot of these key talents, other people cannot find these talents. But over time, if there's really a market, the competitor will hire away your key talents, right? You may have own certain channel, but over time, other people may try and duplicate. The other is that what we call the network externality effect, plus you're the first to critical mass. So there's a switching cost, right? So this is essentially the so-called race to the bottom, right? Both Grab and Uber, and in fact, in most other cities, that's the same, right? Uber versus one, Kuaidi and all that, right? They all try to promote, they try to give incentive for drivers to switch. And eventually, they hope that one last man standing, right? Everybody burning money. In fact, in Singapore, right, we have 3 or 4 bicycle sharing app company, right? Mobike, Obike, and I forgot the third one, right? And all of them are Ofo. all same business model. They all are spending money like crazy to get users. And the market in Singapore, I don't think is big enough for 4 such players. So eventually, some will die because they keep burning to get market share. Eventually, they run out of money, or their investors decided that I put the plug. Then, hopefully, the business model here is that I become the dominant. Then it brought down the question of network externality effect. Network externality effect means if more people are using this same technology, it's much more valuable to me. So this is the so-called Facebook effect, right? The reason I use Facebook is because everybody else and my friend use Facebook. So if I don't use Facebook, I can't really talk to them. So if everybody on Facebook, I have to be on Facebook. But of course, this can change, right? I'm told, for example, the younger millennial, they don't use Facebook. They use Instagram, they use Snapchat, right? So the same idea is that whoever becomes the most dominant, then everybody else had to be there, because I have to for me to be useful, I need to be using the same as them, right? The network externality. Now, you could argue that the network externality essentially leads to a kind of a switching cost. Very hard for me to switch out to another, because for me to switch out to use another social media, I have to convince a lot of my friends to switch. If none of my friends switch and they all still use Facebook, I have no choice but to stay with Facebook. It will take a lot of effort for me to switch out and create another common tool for other people to use, right? So that's why people don't switch. They get stuck. They get sucked into this and they cannot get out, right? That's what you want to achieve. But you could argue that different things have the strength of this so-called network effect varies. My own assessment is that for the bicycle sharing, there's not much of a network effect. It's very easy for me to switch. Okay, I put in $10 deposit. But if this is not really going to be that popular, I can easily switch to another bike. There's not as much of a sharing effect. It's not as if that I must use the same motorbike, same bicycle company in order to visit my friend. There's no such thing, right? Switching cost is very low. So where the switching cost is very low, then this network effect, it means that the network effect is low. So if you think about even for the share riding, how high is the switching cost? I can tell you that on my mobile phone, I have got both Uber and Grab. I have no loyalty. Whoever who offer me the best, I switch to them. Today, Grab is providing better, I use Grab. But if I find, hey, Grab seems to be not so cheap, I check Uber, I will switch. So in this case, it is actually hard to imagine, right, that you can have one that clearly, that I must use it. My friend uses it and therefore I must use it. It's not like that. Facebook is like that. If I want to communicate with my friend on Facebook, I have to be on Facebook. But for Uber, Grab, for bike sharing, it's not like that. My friend can use Ofo, I can use Mobike, no problem. Right? So, and you don't have this lock-in effect, then you find that this will not be strong enough. So in fact, one analysis is that essentially whoever who succeeds is the one that got the most money, that they can survive, last man standing, and the other just die. Yeah. I mean, I personally am skeptical that these will actually be viable business in the long run. Yeah, but that's just my personal view. Yeah? But the idea is that you really want to look at this. If they don't have a strong switching cost, they don't have a network virality, that actually this first to critical mass effect is not very strong. You can have later, and therefore it makes it not so attractive a business. Yeah. The final way in which you can sustain your competitive advantage, of course, is somebody suggested, you have a rapid pace of innovations. You are always one step ahead of your competitor. When your competitor copy you, you introduce a new feature. By the time your competitor copy that, you got something else. And you have to always stay one step of them so that you can continue to enjoy some advantage. But this is the result if you don't have something lasting. What I hope in this group is that all of you have something lasting, something special. Why? Because you are supposed to build upon research that have been done in the lab 5, 10, 15 years, and all this effort have hopefully produced intellectual property, have produced special knowledge and other things that is not so easy to duplicate. And that's why we hope that you all will be able to come up with solution. It's not so easily copyable, right? But this is something you need to examine, yeah? You may need to consider some combination of this, but even this, people can invent around, right? It's not always foolproof, yeah? And also, even this IP can run out. Remember this morning when we talked about the Nespresso, the pod technology, well, the patent has expired. In fact, the guy in Nespresso who invented this, he has left Nespresso. He has started a new company that use exactly the same technology to deliver tea and other drinks, okay? Because the protection has expired, yeah? So nothing is foolproof, but of course this gives you a long period of 20 years of protection, yeah? And hopefully some combination of this. You need to ask yourself, if you are in this happy situation that you are actually making money, that you actually hit a strong spot, this is the next problem you need to think about, yeah? How to sustain it. Okay, so that's the question, right, that you were asking me, and I'm throwing back at you, right, which is that, what is the source of sustainable competitive advantage of Uber? We said that the ride-hailing apps, easily copyable, have been already copied. What is the real competitive advantage? The brand.
Oh, the number of cars on the
Right, the number, okay. It's interesting, they have a lot of driver, right? But how easy for the driver to switch? If I find that I'm not making enough money from driving for Uber, can I switch to drive for somebody else? Quite easy, yeah? In fact, one of the reasons why Uber is stuck in many cities is that the driver keeps switching. It's like the banks, right? They all, they say fresh fund, I give you a higher interest. So everybody just switch the money around the bank, right? To enjoy that so-called higher interest rate, right? So in the same way, the driver can switch easily from driving for Uber to driving for Kuaididi to driving for anybody else. So it's not really a real sustainable competitive advantage. Yes, very good point. So one of the things might be the data analytics that they can generate because they have got the most comprehensive data, right? Now the question is that what can you do with the data? What way you can actually generate money from this?
You can,
right.
you can predict pricing.
Yeah. Of course, they can use it to try and improve their search pricing and so on. But this is where I think Gojek actually has done better because they have actually mined that data to offer a whole range of other services. And they can, in the process, generate even more data, not just about your travel, but about your purchasing, spending habits, yeah? And that's therefore, in fact, one argues that, in fact, Uber has not leveraged on the data they generated as much as they should have. They were going on a model, they assumed that they dominate every city, eventually they become the only share riding company. They're going to wipe out all the taxis and nobody is going to be there. But the reality now, they show that in almost every major market, local competitor have done better than them. Whether it's in China, whether it's in Brazil, whether it's in even like Sri Lanka and all that. In fact, there are very few places outside US where they can continue to dominate. Now, partly, of course, in some places, the nationalism, right? Government may everything else equal, try to protect a local player against them. But it really shows that there is this potential of the data, but they have not shown they have used this data much beyond the current sort of consumer right application. Yeah, they have not leveraged it to other, but it's very important things that are. In fact, if you ask the bicycle sharing company why they are doing this, they say that this bike sharing is actually a loss leader, right? It's be able to generate the data so that from this data they can sell the data to other people. If I know that this person typically ride between point A and point B, then the merchants along the road might be able to offer maybe whatever to them. It's actually undoubtful how valuable is that information, but that's what they use to sell to the investors and so on. Yeah, I personally think that this market is overhyped, and probably a lot of the investors will lose money. And in fact, if you look at Uber, the latest round is a down round. It's at a lower valuation than what was in the previous valuation, which showed that there was some exuberance, right? They were valued at, I think, 68 billion. Now it's down. Yeah. All of this is saying that if we accumulate a big enough user base, we can use this user base to monetize in one way or another, doing beta analytics, selling the information to others, right? And attracting, and this giving this point is a way to ensure they stay as a user, right? But this is related to a different business model where you are trying to use the data you created to create new values, yeah? Okay? Right, so I want to sort of just finish up by going back to the point I said about that you have to think about the timing of your access, and there's this issue about a chasm. Usually, from the early adopters to get to the so-called tornado market, there's a chasm, meaning that the mainstream buyers usually are not willing to buy, even if there's some early adopter. They will only buy if someone like them have actually adopted. So this is the so-called beachhead challenge. You need to find one of these players here who are willing to adopt your technology to help you cross the chasm. Yeah, so that is the challenge, that there's a break. You can have some early adopter, but it doesn't mean that the big mainstream buyer here will use it. Some years ago, we have a NUS spin-off company. It's not NUS. There's a spin-off company in Singapore that actually provide a solution for pharmaceutical-related research to speed up their processing of certain algorithms. And they were able to sell to many of the universities. MIT, NUS were all using it. But the company eventually died because these businesses are very small. You know, MIT will buy one or two, NUS buy one or two, and after that you run out of this small. Their main market are the big pharmaceutical company who do all the really heavy duty, use. But when they try to sell to the big pharma company, the first thing they ask is, which other large pharmaceutical company like us have used this? And they say, no, none yet, but we got a lot of universities that use it. And their answer was, the universities are not like us. They are small version, they're experimenting, they're doing small scale thing. We, in a different environment, production environment, we have much more stringent and all that. So unless you show me that one of the pharma company had adopted it, we won't be the first guinea pig. Okay, you must give me a track record of somebody that have done it. Same thing with banks. You want to get the banks to buy, to install banking software, right? The first question they ask is, which other big bank has bought the software, right? I mentioned that in another context, I mentioned this story about a company called System Access. System Access is one of the very few Singapore indigenous financial software that was before fintech become the jargon. They developed way back in the 1980s and 1990s when the first move by banks away from mainframe computer. In the old day, banks, retail banking software are all run on the mainframe computers. Of course, in the 80s and early 90s, there's a revolution of switch to what they call client-server architecture. And out of that, now, today, all the banking software are run on relational database, running on client-server architecture, right? But at the early stage, all the bank were using mainframe software. So Leslie Low, who was a Singapore entrepreneur, he had the idea that he thinks that the future is in relational database. And at that time when he started, there was no dominant relational database software. There were Oracle, there were a few other companies. In fact, it wasn't obvious that Oracle would become the leader, right? So but he betted on Oracle. In fact, I asked him before, he said it was just a matter of luck that he betted, because at that point you can never tell whether it's Oracle or somebody else will become dominant. All of them were small, young startups. So when he thinks that the future is relational database software, but he talked to all the banks, no banks will be willing to try it, because first the local banks say, had any other big bank adopted it? If none, we don't want to try it, right? When they talk to Citibank say, the headquarters decide, right? You got to go to talk to my New York headquarters. But he had a lucky break, because that time the appetite fell in South Africa, and the market is liberalized. New banks were allowed, and a new retail bank came in the market. And this new retail bank had no legacy system, and they say that, okay, we are starting from scratch, a new bank, and therefore we want to use relational database running on client server. And they look around the world and see which software company offered a relational database, and actually they found this company, Leslie. It's not Leslie found them, you know. Leslie happened to do a small advertisement in one of these computer, magazine, right? So this South African bank called them and came all the way to come and look at what he has. This is the example of the kind of early market adoption. This new bank is a new kid on the block. They are more hungry. They are more willing to try new things. First, they have no legacy. Secondly, they want to outbid the existing bank. And they know that the way to beat the existing bank is do something different. If we do the same thing as the existing bank, how can they do better, right? So they are looking for something new. I remember he was telling me that when he got this delegation coming, that time he was operating in a small office, just a few of them, right? And there's an office next door which is much bigger, I think about 30, 40 employees. He had only 4 or 5, I think. So when this South African bank come, he go and tell his friend next door, hey, can you all pretend that we are one company? So that when they come, they see that, wow, the company had about 40 employees, so that it doesn't look so risky. Because imagine, right, if they come and say, you are a small software company with 4 or 5 companies, how can I buy from you? Maybe tomorrow you go under, And then I'm stuck, I buy a software from a company who is going to maintain and help me, right? That is the one big disadvantage of a new innovator. You have no track record. People find it difficult to trust you. Your technology may perform much better than existing technology, but can I be sure that you still be around next year to support me, right? That's the number one question they ask. And unless you sort of have some way to give them some assurance, but anyway, the end of the point of the story is that they got the first big break. A bank that actually adopted this and proven, so it became a reference customer. Now, it's interesting that up to that point, he had customer as investment bank. But investment bank product are completely different from retail bank. Because investment bank product, each one is a small system, few transactions, each one very high value. Retail banking is different. Many transactions, each one small value. And therefore, scalability and system ability to deal with many transactions, completely different set of requirements. So he had no problem getting investment bank. He has several investment banking clients. So, but none of this is a good reference customer, because to the retail bank, the fact that you got a few investment bank as a customer mean nothing, because their needs are different from ours, right? So that's the meaning of the reference. Now, why we call this tornado? It's a tornado because all of them are saying, I don't want to be the first to adopt, but if somebody like me has adopted, I also want to adopt. Why? Because I don't want to lose out, because they are my competitor. If my competitor has this, I better have it. But if they don't have it, I also don't want to have it. Right? So everybody wait. But once you have a breakthrough, it's a tornado, meaning that the market doesn't go linearly. It doesn't say that each year my market penetration increased by 5%, 10%, 15%. It's not like that at all. It's like you go for years, no customer. Then you hit one customer. Then next year, it may go to 50, 100% of the market. That's why it goes up very fast. Because once one had proven to work, everybody wants to jump in. And now the challenge becomes one of, can you scale? So the challenge in many cases is that you manage to cross the chasm, but you cannot scale fast enough, and you get overrun by the other bigger, more organized, structured player. That's why in most cases, actually the history of innovation shows that the first guy that actually introduced something never succeed in the eventual mainstream market. Yeah? So I mentioned to you the case of what we have, right? We have developed a solution that actually allow you to put on an iPad and all that, but these are just enthusiasts. These are people who are so enthusiastic about a product, they actually sign up, they try to talk to their gym and get their gym to. So we have no shortage of such users. But this market is still not that big. The main problem is how to convince the major treadmill machine makers to build into their machines this capability, internet connectivity and this display, and a display that is connected to the up and down mechanism of the machine, so that when the actual route, Yosemite go up, the machine will also go up, right? So you can actually simulate this. Treadmill machine maker don't introduce a new treadmill model every year. Take a few years. And it took us a long time to convince them. Okay, so that's why although we had achieved a lot of individual consumer interest in our product, we didn't really have a major breakthrough. We just had, after spending 3-4 years, finally this last Christmas, we managed to get one of the major treadmill maker, which is Nautilus. They agreed to roll out for their Christmas new season, new treadmill machine. They actually incorporated this functionality. And in fact, our app is one of those that they recommended to be installed. And we are cautiously hopeful that with that breakthrough, hopefully more other treadmill makers will start to adopt. We don't know yet. Yeah? So maybe next year, if you're still around, I will tell you if our company died or our company managed to go up this. Yeah? Yeah? Okay, but this is the challenge, yeah? Chasm Crossing challenge. Right, so just this cartoon kind of highlight the problem is that, right, the disadvantage of being a first mover is that you pay all the tuition fees. You make all the mistakes. The other people saw the mistake you made, they avoid it. They saw the trap, they walk around it. Right? You pay the cost. And that's why the history have shown that most of the first mover never became the dominant player in the mass market. Okay? Now, we all are familiar with names like Amazon, right? But you may not know that the first company that do this book online is not Amazon, it's books.com, yeah? And the first company that made sort of voice over IP is not Skype, it's an Israeli company called Workertech. But all of them helped created this market grow, but then they cannot scale fast enough, and this bigger, better executed player then dominate. Yeah. So maybe you can say in hindsight, some of these companies should have actually sold out, licensed their technology, or become acquired by the bigger players. Maybe that may be a better way to succeed than to try and build a company all the way. As we move towards the end of the 10-week, we'll start talking about what is your so-called growth strategy. And very often you find that depending on the nature of your product, so sometimes it's better that you actually license your technology to a large existing company who can help you scale, rather than you yourself try to build the distribution channel, try to build a customer relationship. It will take you too long, and then you may die in the process. Yeah? So that will be something that we come to later when you have established more clearly what is your value proposition. Yeah? But this is just to sort of highlight to you that one of the challenges is that you need to sort of find a beachhead. Initially, in ours, it's very hard to try and sell here directly. You have to sort of find a beachhead to enter and hopefully use it to help you cross into this. And the idea of a beachhead is a market, the so-called low-hanging fruit, where the requirement is less stringent than the main market. Because when you want to sell to the mainstream user, they want to make sure that the product is totally reliable. I can on the switch, it works, and there are no bugs. Everything has been cleaned out, right? So, but you cannot clean out all the bugs unless you have some user first. And so the idea is that you find some small beachhead that tests out, validated your idea, where the requirement is not so stringent, and that after that validation, then you build upon it. So the first rule about finding beachhead is never go for the biggest guy. Because the bigger customer tend to be the most arrogant and tend to be the most difficult to convince. You want to go for the number 2. There's a famous advertisement. I keep forgetting whether it's Avis or Hertz to say, we try harder. Right? Avis, they are the number 2. Right? You remember their slogan, we try harder. Why does the number 2 try harder? Because they want to be number 1. Their goal in life is to overtake the number 1. To overtake the number 1, they have to do something different from the number 1. Because if they do the same thing as number 1 does, chances that they overtake is very hard. The number 1 is number 1 because they were doing very well in what they do. So therefore, the number 2 had to be prepared to try something different. And that something different sometimes means trying a new technology, which is risky, but if it works, it helps them leapfrog the number 1, right? So they tend to be more hungry. So always try to find somebody in the industry who is not number 1 and who is more hungry and who is prepared to take the extra risk to try out your unproven technology so that they have a chance to knock down the number 1. Somebody whose goal in life is to knock down the number 1. The number 1, they don't have to do anything, right? They are number 1, right? So unless you have something so compelling to them and does not disrupt what they currently do, they can sit and wait. They will always tell you, yeah, this is good, but I need you to improve some more, before they adopt. And you will die trying to meet their requirements, right? So a beachhead is to allow you to sort of get a low-hanging fruit early adopter, and we call it a bowling pin. A bowling pin means that hopefully you sell to that customer segment with one applications, not the whole sort of range of possible applications you can do. And then after that, you can expand in one of 2 ways. One is that you try to, you sell one app to this segment, they are happy with it, then you say, since you are happy with me, why not I upsell you something else to the same customer. So the customer now has some comfort with you, you have sold them something that worked well, they have some trust in you. Okay, I don't mind trying to work with you again, right? Something else. That's the way that you therefore scale up to expand the product scope of what you sell them. Get an entry point with them first to prove to them that you are capable of delivering something, right? The other thing is to stick the same app but try to sell to a slightly different market. Tweak it a little bit so that you can do a bit better with it, yeah? So we had one NUS spin-off company that actually developed what we call real-time surveillance camera. So the first customer they actually had is the Singapore bus. Now some of you may not know, you bought a public bus in Singapore, there's a camera there that had real-time capturing of everything that happened in the bus, and it gets streamed to the headquarters. If at any time they want to see anything, they can actually see it. And also all the video are captured on a disk drive that is sitting in the bus. Okay, and the information can also on demand be streamed to the headquarters command center, right? In fact, they get this project because remember I say big company will not buy from a small startup. Sure enough, when the initial bid for it, they didn't get the project. They gave it to one of the big, IT company. I don't want to mention name, right? Big, well-known company. One of those where if it doesn't work, you won't lose it. You won't lose your job, right? They got the company to do, but the company didn't make it work. The project failed. So because the project failed, they have no choice. They then come to them and say, well, can you try and see whether it make it work? So that's how they got the foot in there to provide a rugged system that, it turns out that when you put a hard disk in the bus is very shaky, So after a while, the hard disk will fail. And after a while, the system starts to malfunction. So they managed to, so they first put in a real-time surveillance camera system to a bus company. But once they got it, then the next thing they say, hey, bus company, you have already installed this system. How about I sell you a layer of software to help you now count customers? Because everybody who bought the bus, the camera, right, can be some sort of a pattern recognition, recognize how many heads come in. I help you actually automatically count the number of passengers in the bus. Okay? So it's easier for them to sell because they already got the one foot in the door, right? So that's how and then they then sell them some other app, right? So that's one way to grow. And then they use this risk domain to try to go in another market segment, which is another second. It turns out that they're able to found ambulance. You know, when an ambulance, when somebody call an emergency ambulance, the ambulance will go to the house, pick up the patient, and then they will start to monitor all the vital signs and in the ambulance itself, right? But all the information are stored in the hard disk in the ambulance. Only when the ambulance reaches the hospital, they pull this out and plug into the hospital system, then they can read all the readings. But that means there's a delay. So the idea is that since I do all this online streaming and surveillance technology, I can easily stream. The moment you get into an ambulance, all the measurements start to be made. I stream the result in real time as it's being measured to the hospital. So by the time you reach the hospital already have seen all the measurements and therefore have decided what are the emergency actions to take. And sometimes half an hour difference can mean life and death, right? Okay? So this is an example where you are using more or less the same solution you developed, tweak it a bit, but now you sell to a related market. And then hopefully this you can expand to find some other market. Right? So there are two ways to kind of start from a beachhead, start to grow your market. And the metaphor here is like a bowling pin. You knock down a low-hanging segment, use it to knock down another segment this way, knock down a segment, and then you start to grow. So some of you may have to think about the main market you want to attack is too hard to go in first. The big banks, the big whatever, big pharma company, the biggest whatever, very hard to convince them. Find some other low-hanging market first. And use that as a reference customer to allow you to then get a bigger customer. Okay? So that's the gist of the idea. And the key thing you want to keep in mind is that that low-hanging fruit, that beachhead, is a beachhead to a continent and not a beachhead to a small island. You know the difference. A beachhead to a big continent means that if you succeed in this, the rest of the continent, you can start to enter. But if your solution is so specialized, you only can grow inside the island itself, it cannot spread beyond. That means you will forever stay a very small niche market or a market that is not big enough to actually be profitable in the long run. So you want to avoid finding beachhead that are to a small island. You want to find beachhead to a continent. Yeah? So that's the metaphor I'd like you to keep in mind. Yeah? Okay, so I guess I have covered the main point. Just to highlight, when you reach this point, you need a completely different set of capability. The capability here is to really make sure that you get your performance feature right. You get the competitive positioning right. Here is about scaling. Scaling means you have to have operation efficiency. You need the people to be able to grow the market very fast, to expand very fast. And most likely that if you are a startup, you need to bring in a whole new team of management people. People who have the experience to actually grow from maybe a 1 million business to a 500 million business. The skills are very different from growing it from 0 to 1 million. Different set of skills, right? So that will be a topic that we will cover later. But the key thing is for you to have an understanding of what are the requirements here and what are the requirements here, so that you can design what is your beachhead market. Yeah. Something that we will come to at the later part of this module as you start to do more your interview. You realize what are the requirements to get into here, and you will find out from your interview who might be a good beachhead that had good reference customer value. Yeah. Okay, so now I just want to sort of confirm that in your competitive analysis, you remember you have to offer better value than alternative competitors for a big enough market, and that allow you to be able to achieve this technically, feasibly, and in a financially viable way, right? So that's the whole entire sort of exercise involved, finding a right business model, a right value proposition, a right competitive positioning for you to achieve this, yeah?